I'm Brielle and I am a service dog trainer and handler, and today I wanted to tell you guys some kind of like interesting controversial stories and kind of hear your thoughts on them that are about dogs and service dogs. So I have 4 of these for you today, and they're from a while ago, so there's already like a verdict on them. They are on the subreddit Am I the A-hole? You guys have probably heard of it. I know I've talked about it in previous live streams, and I've like done some readings of them on previous live streams, but if you haven't joined any of our live streams, you might not know what it is. Basically, it is a forum where people can go on and sort of talk about any conflict that they're experiencing, and you know, you can give the best version of both sides of the story that you can come up with, and then you can find out in like a council and jury of your peers if you are the a-hole or not the a-hole. And typically the way people do it is we just have like a bunch of comments that go under the thread, and they say like, oh, you are the a-hole or you're not the a-hole. And I've been on this subreddit for a little bit now, but I just haven't made a video about it because finding service dog ones specifically or dog specific ones is like sometimes difficult. So I wanted to sort of just read service dog ones because there's a lot of people who read other ones like on podcasts and other places like that, you know, like that's their niche. So I'm good with just doing stuff that I know about. So this first one says, am I the a-hole? I pet a not marked service dog. I walked out of a restaurant and a dog wearing a regular leash and collar, no vest at all, nudged me. I pet his head and called him a good boy. The owner pulled him away and said he was a service dog. I said, I'm sorry, but without a vest I would not know. Owner said very sarcastically, well, I will get him a vest just for you. I walked away, but I'm upset. I would never pet a marked service dog, and I know I should ask permission to pet anyone's pet, but the dog leaned into me, and the owner should have an animal they do not want pet either under better control or marked as a service animal. So as you can see, there's a lot of comments on this. A lot of people voted on it and you know, helped decide the verdict. And I'm going to talk about my opinion, and then I'm going to talk about what the verdict was just on the subreddit. So in my opinion, when you're out in public, and this person says that they walked out of a restaurant, so my assumption is that they're actually outside. They're not inside the restaurant, they're outside the restaurant, like just on the street. And this dog walks up and like nudges into this person. I do agree that the handler should probably have better control over their dog, no matter if they're a service dog or not, because if you are concerned about someone else petting your dog, that part of that is your responsibility. Part of that is you advocating for your dog and making sure that you're putting what you can into making sure that other people are not petting your dog. But on the other hand as well, it is sort of at this point public knowledge that if a dog is not yours and you do not know anything about the dog, you should not pet them, just kind of no matter what. Or at the very least, you should ask permission and say like, hey, your dog is so cute, can I pet your dog? And then at that point, that's when the handler or owner of the dog can sort of make that decision and decide, yes, you can pet my dog, or no, you cannot for X, Y reason, or they don't even have to give you a reason technically. So personally, I don't think that this person is the a-hole, but that's just me. It's very possible that other people disagreed with me. But I also think that they could have made a better decision. You know, like, I don't think that they're like wrong, like versus the other person. You know, it's not a very clear yes or no, but I do think that they could have handled it better. So Reddit, of course, said that they were not the a-hole. A lot of people on here basically said a similar thing to what I said, which was the animal shouldn't be soliciting pets from this stranger, because that's not really service animal behavior. They have to sort of like have better control over their dog, because otherwise you can't really expect the public to just know what to do every time. However, at the same time, and some people also said this, is that you really, really, really need to ask before you pet any dog, before you pet any animal whatsoever, because you have no idea if that dog is, you know, could be a service dog. However, it could also be aggressive and you could get hurt, Or the dog could be, you know, maybe the dog is like fearful or reactive or whatever, and you could be putting back their training, or you could get hurt yourself. So in any situation where you don't know the dog and the dog is also doesn't belong to you, always, always, always ask to pet an animal that isn't yours, like in any circumstance, because otherwise you run the risk of something like this happening where, you know, he pet a service dog without knowing, or, you know, maybe the dog could have been aggressive or something, and that also would have been bad. Here is the second one. Am I the a-hole for making my sister-in-law drive 5 hours home to drop off her so-called service dog? With the upcoming holiday weekend, my wife's family decided to take a new approach after being stuck in traffic every year. Seeing as my wife and I live in the largest house with the most bedrooms, they would visit us again, but they'd take a couple of extra days off to come early and beat the traffic. Over the next couple of days, we're going to have about 20 people arriving at various times to enjoy the barbecue, fireworks, and alcohol. Now, my sister-in-law is a huge dog lover. She takes her dog everywhere. She got a fake service dog jacket for the dog so that she could take it into restaurants, shopping malls, and other places that don't allow dogs. On the other hand, I detest dogs. I don't want them near me or even in my house. I want to, first of all, set the record straight here. I don't think that we have enough information to determine if this dog is a service animal or not. I don't think that we have enough information to determine that. I do think that we do have enough information to determine that this person obviously doesn't like dogs, and that's, you know, that is like for sure their prerogative. You can do whatever you want. But if the dog is really a service dog, and like this woman is actually disabled and the dog knows tasks and is well behaved and is kept clean and healthy and is trained specific tasks for the handler's disability, then it is a service dog. Whether or not they got a certification online that they shouldn't have gotten, the dog can still be a service dog. Even people who get fake certifications, if their dog does meet all the AITA requirements, it's still a service dog. So it's very difficult for us to know, just based off of this information, if the dog is actually a service dog. However, I am going to be under the assumption that this person writing the post knows that the sister-in-law is, at the very least, knows that she is either disabled or not disabled. And if he can determine that she is not disabled, you know, by the fact that, you know, it's his wife's sister, I'm assuming, then you would know. Because if the person isn't disabled, that's like step one, and then you can't have a service dog if you're not disabled. So, yeah. Before my sister-in-law came, I was extremely clear. No dog. Get a dog sitter. Put a bowl of food and water on the floor and play Homeward Bound on repeat. I don't care what you do, but do not bring your dog to my house. I especially hate her big dumb dog because it's poorly trained, needs around-the-clock attention, and refuses to leave me alone. It's the obnoxious type of dog that will jump onto the table to literally steal the food from your hand. Okay, so now based on the second paragraph, we know this dog is not a service dog. Because if the dog is poorly trained, and it needs around-the-clock attention, and refuses to leave people other than the handler alone, as well as stealing food from your hand or from the table or wherever, we know that dog isn't a service dog. So we can now make that assumption. So, you know, people in the comments who are already upset saying, like, it could still be a service dog. Well, at this point now we know it's not. A couple of hours ago, at about 7 p.m., sister-in-law rolled up, opened the passenger side door to her SUV, which she bought solely to give her more space for her dog, cool, and outran old Lassie, ready to run and piss and shit all over the place. She actually had the audacity to play it off as ignorance despite my multiple text messages saying not to bring her dog. When I told her she couldn't bring her dog inside, she apologetically smiled and said, "Sorry, sitter canceled." There was no sitter. I just said no, the dog can stay in the car. Which I will say, in a lot of states, that is actually just illegal. Like, you can't do that even in residential areas. So, you know, that isn't really an option in most situations. At that point, I would just say, like, your dog can't stay in the car and it can't come inside, so you have to go home. My sister-in-law then tried to play off the service dog sob story about how she needs an emotional support animal, which is not a service animal, by the way. To which I responded she should actually get a real service dog. Then she started debating about how the dog would have a panic attack in the car. Yeah, nothing quite screams service animal like will flip out if left alone for 2 minutes. Well, and I will say this, if a service animal is left alone in a public area and they know that their handler went into that public area or wherever alone, yeah, they're probably going to freak out, because a lot of service dogs do have separation anxiety that is relatively typical, because they spend every waking moment with their handler. So time apart from their handler is difficult. And it's very difficult to train a dog to not have separation anxiety if they're being required to be a service dog and be so in tune with their handler. So I will say that it does make sense why her dog would freak out in the car. However, at this point, if there's no way that, dog can't be left in the car, dog can't go inside, they should go home. My wife, who has spent the last 23 years of her life enabling her sister, agreed that they could stay just one night. Everyone else was agreeing, and my sister-in-law brightened up at this idea, but I know her personality enough to know she's going to turn one night into I'll do it after breakfast, and that into oops, had a glass of wine, can't drive now. I put my foot down and said no. My sister-in-law left for a night drive back home so she could figure out the dog situation, and everyone is mad at me. They called me a monster for making a young woman drive home 5 hours in the middle of the night, and I said I wasn't alone because she had her service dog. That made them even angrier. Now I'm alone in my den, people are furious at me, and I wonder if I'm just being an asshole. So, in my opinion, the sister-in-law is the typical fake service dog handler. They think that their dog is allowed to go everywhere with them, even like residential places. They don't know the laws. It's just a pet dog that is apparently also poorly trained. So, the person forcing her to drive 5 hours home, I do feel like there might have been maybe other options in terms of like, okay, well, maybe there's like a pet-friendly hotel nearby that they could stay at and the dog could stay. Well, that doesn't even seem really like a great idea either. At that point, I agree that driving home is probably the best option. However, I do think that if you know that a family member has an animal and that they, even that they're very highly attached to this animal, I think that you should have been under the expectation that she was going to bring the animal, despite you telling her not to. Because if you supposedly know so much about this person, then you know that they're going to bring the animal. And at that point, you should just either not invite them or make accommodations. So basically, it's the same thing that a lot of people are saying. Don't pass off pets as fake service dogs. A lot of people here are missing the fact that service dogs do not have the same rights to enter into residential areas as they do to enter into public spaces. ADA law protects public spaces, not private spaces or residential spaces or confidential spaces. So the dog does not have any right to enter this home, period. And so this is like, the service dog thing doesn't even really apply or matter here because of the fact that it's in a residential space. So like, even without that, like you could have like not said anything about the service dog thing and you still wouldn't have been the a-hole. This one says, am I the a-hole for threatening to kick my brother out for trying to undo my service dog's training and telling me I don't need one? My brother Jack, 25, recently lost his job. Our parents do not have any space for him at their home, so he moved in with me, 23 male. I have a service dog, Ripley. He's a 6-year-old St. Bernard and an absolute gentle giant. I suffer from some pretty severe agoraphobia and anxiety, prone to panic attacks when I leave the house. Ripley is a godsend and has been helping me get my life back together. Jack doesn't really like that I have a service dog, though. He doesn't believe that mental health issues are a big deal and I just need to get over it. Which, let's be real, is a lot easier said than done. We've never been particularly close and he has often accused me of being an attention seeker. Due to the fact that Ripley is a service dog, it is very important to me that I keep on top of his training and I have a strict routine that both Ripley and I follow. However, around 3 or 4 weeks ago, I woke up to Ripley growling. Under further inspection, I saw Jack holding a lead and trying to pull Ripley out of my bedroom. I intervened and Ripley ran to my side. Jack told me that he just wanted to save me the trouble of walking Ripley and had taken it upon himself to do it instead. Ew. I explained to him that this is not appropriate and that I am the one who walks Ripley. He seemed to accept it at first. Over the past couple of weeks, he's been going out of his way to go against my wishes. He tries to feed Ripley at different times, tries to give him food off of his plate, will try to pet him when we're out in public, when Ripley has to be focused, etc. Literally anything to undo his training, which he admitted kind of smugly one night when he had a drink. Eventually, I snapped at him and told him to give it a reset. He fired back that Ripley must be absolutely miserable as he has no time to be a normal dog. This is, of course, completely untrue. He then called me an attention seeker and said that I'm not physically disabled, so I do not need a service dog, and that the only reason I had Ripley was to get attention from strangers. I threatened to kick him out, and Jack went silent and left the room. I will say that, in my personal opinion, just as somebody who's trained a lot of service dogs for social anxiety and agoraphobia are not very effective. If you have other conditions, that makes sense, but the reason that they're not effective is because people who have agoraphobia and social anxiety are not just by definition are not okay with being in the spotlight. They do not like that. So when you have a big, or any dog with you, it calls attention to you and it calls you sort of into the spotlight. So it would actually, just by logical reasoning, make it worse. However, if you have other conditions that require a service dog, let's say that you have, if you have panic attacks, that kind of thing, having a service dog can still be helpful to you. It just might make those agoraphobia symptoms or social anxiety symptoms worse. Later, I got several angry texts from family members for threatening to leave my own brother homeless. I do regret it, as I think I went a bit too far. Jack is absolutely terrified of having nowhere to go, and the threat might be a bit cruel. But at the same time, Ripley isn't just a dog. He helps me. He calms me down from panic attacks, gives me reason to leave the house, and just generally makes my life easier. Undoing his training would completely destroy that. Am I the a-hole? I don't think that this guy is the a-hole, right? Obviously. However, I do think that his original thought of he should kick his brother out for that is pretty justified, because if this is your medical equipment, that would be let's say that a person is obviously trying to unplug your oxygen in the middle of the night, right? So that you start to suffer, okay? Would you kick that person out? Because I for sure would. That just, if somebody's messing with your medical equipment, of course they don't deserve to be housed by you. They added an edit here, so I'm going to read that as well. First, thank you guys for all the support. The kind comments really mean a lot. I've been trying to read each and every one of them. I've seen a couple questions in the comments, so I figured I'd just answer them here. Ripley is a service dog, not an emotional support animal. He helps ground me during panic attacks, helps me remember to take my medication, and brings my medication to me. I can't say the other thing he does because of the rules, but when I'm in a dark place and try to do something I probably shouldn't, he is trying to interrupt me and prevent me from doing it. Oh, okay, so he's talking about a self-harm interruption. My family know exactly what Jack is like. They all conveniently had no space at their houses to take him in, as they don't want to deal with him. They also do know how bad my anxiety is and agree that Ripley is the best thing for helping me deal with it. If they think any differently, they haven't let on. And thank you to the people who mentioned that having Jack here is making Ripley uncomfortable. I feel like a horrible person for letting him stay for so long and making Ripley deal with that. He's a good boy and shouldn't have to be uncomfortable in his own home. I've texted several of my family members, including my parents, and with my side of the story. Turns out Jack has twisted it a little bit. I told them that they're welcome to take him in, but I cannot keep him in my home anymore, as he's putting myself and Ripley at risk. Some family members are on my side now, but there are still a fair few who think I'm an asshole. And guess what? My parents are somehow managing to clear out their storage room to make space for Jack. Isn't that weird? Anyway, thank you, kind people of Reddit. So, basically, the ruling on this is that he wasn't the a-hole, obviously. And it does seem like, it kind of came to a resolution of this brother moving out. Because at this point, the service animal does have higher precedent in terms of that animal, that's his home, and this brother is like a visitor or somebody that they're doing a favor. It's not, his home. So I would say that how he handled it was relatively good. I do understand that it maybe might cause issues with family, as stuff like this always does. Disagreements in families, everyone's always on one side or the other, obviously. So that makes total sense. A lot of people in the comments were basically just saying that oh, it's mean for you to kick out your brother or whatever, but I don't think that it really is that mean when when the brother isn't safe. You know, he's trying to remove his medical equipment while basically taking advantage of him. It's just weird. That concludes our 3 Am I the A-hole service dog stories for today. I know that like I didn't give like a ton of opinion. I would love to do this with like Michaela at some point or something and just kind of have like 2 sides to talk about it. But it's just a really interesting sort of like thing to go into, is these disagreements where people do have like different viewpoints on stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more content similar to this, you can hit the subscribe button down below. And if you liked this video, you should give it a like, because, or you can dislike it. If you liked this video, you should hit that dislike button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in whatever I make next.